This is one of the first pieces I ever refinished. I did this one years ago for my sister when I was just figuring it all out, and today I'm giving it a bold transformation. I'm talking complete polar opposites. I can't believe how far I've come, and if you're just starting out, let this be proof you get better with every piece you do. Originally, I picked this up on the side of the road, and if I was to be really critical, these DIY handles, what was I thinking? I didn't sand in the details properly. I didn't get the finish off enough. So when I sealed, it kind of had some weird little orangey patches. It got some watermarks up top, which means that whatever I used to seal, probably a water-based poly at this point, didn't seal the top effectively. But you know what? We all start somewhere. So these are all things that can be fixed. So I started by removing all of those little handles. I then used some dowels to fill in the existing handle holes. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can use a traditional wood filler. You can use dowels like I am doing now, or you can use a two-part epoxy, all depending on what look you are going for in the end. Because I'm going to be installing handles that were screwed in from the front and I'm doing a timber look, I chose to go down the dowel path. My dowels were a little bit bigger, so I used a drill bit that was just a tiny bit smaller than the actual dowel to open up the handle hole so that when I knocked the dowels in, they were firm. I also put some glue on. This is an added strength step for me. It isn't necessary when they fit that snugly in the hole normally, but because I was going to be screwing into this exact place, I wanted to have a little bit of extra strength. On the sides of the body of the piece, there was a little bit of separation where the boards had come apart, so I used some glue and clamps to get that together as much as I could. For the tiny little gap that did remain, I used some Timbermate wood filler. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I love putting legs on furniture, so I'm going to be installing this set, but I needed to put some timber into the back so that they would have something to be installed onto. I used non-structural pine offcuts that I had to create this base. I had to pack it out a tiny bit. I used some Venetian blinds, which you can kind of just see in that gap there. I made my own pocket hole to go down and drill into the side of the body of the piece, and then I put some timber screws where I'm working now. So that's actually the bottom frame of the piece. I screwed in through that frame and up into the timber that I was installing. I really loved the little legs. I thought they were quite modern, but I didn't like that harsh gold tone that they were originally. So I used some etch primer on the little legs first, and then I sprayed some Rust-Oleum rose gold spray paint. Once the glue had completely dried on the dowels, I used my renovator or multi-tool to cut them off flush with the drawer front. You just want to make sure that when you do this that you are very careful cutting them off flush and that you don't sort of tip the blade down and take gouges out of the drawer front. Now that all the add-ons and repairs had been done, I went around with some vinegar and water. This is a 50-50 cleaning ratio that I use across the entire piece, inside the drawers, inside the body of the piece, gave everything a thorough wipe over, let it dry in the sunshine so that I could come back and sand. I tackled the little detailed grooves by hand. I wrapped an old sanding disc around an old Venetian blind that I had, but you could use card. And then I went on to sanding down the drawer fronts with 120 grit sandpaper. That 120 in this instance was enough to knock down what remained of those dowels and remove the light coat of poly that I'd put on previously. For the body, I actually dropped down to 80 grit sandpaper, and that's because I had these watermarks. You can go in and try and remove watermarks like this by just sanding, but if they are deep, you can also use bleach or oxalic acid. I was lucky though, these were sitting quite superficially, so I was able to sand them out. So I went up from that 80 to 120 grit sandpaper, followed by 180 across everything, so those drawer fronts as well. I wanted a complete night and day transformation with this one, so I'm going in with a mid-brown walnut stain. This one is by Fiddes. It is in their water stain range. It's a very forgiving stain and applies beautifully. I watered this one down 50-50 though, so that I could have more control applying with my spray gun. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I do like to do this so that I can build up the color. We did start off a little bit patchy, and I was wondering what was going on here, so I actually stopped, and this is a good learning curve for anyone that does spraying. Make sure that the uptake tube, which is the tube that runs down into the reservoir, is actually pointing towards the front when you are spraying. That way, when you are spraying downwards, the product goes to the front of the reservoir and it uptakes evenly. So you can see here it's off to the left. I've pointed it back down to the front. After I'd fixed up the tube, I gave where I'd already sprayed a quick wipe over with an old t-shirt and then continued on. And you can see I'm just getting a nice consistent spray pattern. This stain does dry incredibly fast, and I did a total of 3 coats just to build up to the level that I wanted. Getting back to the little legs, once they'd completely dried, I put the handles that I was planning to use next to the legs, sort of just to match up the color, and I felt like the handle was a little bit warmer than what the legs were. So to balance this out, I applied some Rub and Buff, and this is the color Autumn Gold. It's a really beautiful, warm, copper, almost bronze tone. You can see here that handle next to the leg that I've applied the Rub and Buff to, and it's more cohesive. There's just that little bit more warmth. I wish all legs were this easy to install. I just used timber screws, went straight down into the frame of the piece and onto that timber that I'd added in the back. I think darker timber looks absolutely stunning when it has a little bit of sheen. So to seal this one, I chose Fiddes hard wax oil in their gloss sheen level. This particular hard wax oil can be applied to any interior timber surface, and I'm talking those really high traffic areas like floors, dining tables, kitchen benches, bathroom vanities. It's water resistant, it's stain resistant and food safe, but the thing that stood out the most for me as a mum is that it's toy safe as well. I applied 2 coats of the hard wax oil using this little 4mm nap roller, working with the grain. Once those coats were completely dry, I installed the hardware and I just used some little copper knobs for the top drawer. My final step on this flip was to line each of the drawers with some adhesive wallpaper. This is one that I picked up on Temu. It's very cheap and cheerful. I probably wouldn't put it on a wall, but it's perfect for lining drawers. It's got a little bit of stick to it. It's easy to work with. I actually put the wallpaper down underneath the drawer, get the basic measurement, put it into place, and then trim off the excess. Okay, guys, you've made it to the end of this video. Let's get a quick reminder of where we started out, and this is where we are now. A glow up is an understatement. This is a complete night and day transformation, and I am so happy with how it turned out. I think the color palette is refined. It has an elegant overall look to it. The copper is bringing out that timber grain. This liner works so well with the chocolatey walnut tone and the copper handles, and just getting this piece up off the ground has made a huge difference. But as always, I'd love to know what you guys think, so jump in the comments, let me know, is this one a nail or a fail?